Okay. So, hi everybody. I am Jaelyn. I'm a current student at Loyola Marymount University. I'm in my senior year and I am a theater major. And today I have with me Meggan Gomez. So, thank you for being here with me today. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. So, I just have some questions for you. So, I first want to know what made you choose the theater field?
Well, I think the thing that I love most about theater is it generally, pre-pandemic, but generally it is one of the only art forms where the art making and art experiencing are happening at the exact same time and impacting each other. And I just really love the feeling of being working with a group of people towards a common goal, doing something that you couldn't do alone. So that was something that really drew me to the theater early on, and something that's like helped drive my passion for many years since.
Okay, so that follows up with my next question. So, with you being in theater, was theater always your first choice? Did you ever think about LA with film and television?
No, it was always theater. Film for me always moved too slowly. And it was also very separate from the people who were experiencing it. And so for me, like part of the love and the joy is like happening in real time. And so with film, it's a beautiful art form. But for me, the real excitement comes from something that's happening that actually can't be captured in any other way but live. Like even when you watch a theater performance that's been filmed very well, it is not the same thing as being in a theater collectively having that experience. And so for me, that's always where my passion was. And I've been doing theater since I was 10 years old, and it didn't really feel like there was any other path for me. And certainly my trajectory through the theater field has changed over time, but it's always been centered in theater making.
Okay, so could you tell me a little bit more about your role in the theater field and what exactly that you do now?
Sure. So most recently, I was the executive director of Theater of the Oppressed NYC. I was there until last month. And I made the choice to leave the organization, not because I didn't want to do theater anymore, but because being an executive director actually took me further away from the art making process and further away from the things that I love about theater, and really was more about being the boss, essentially. And so Theater of the Oppressed, I don't know if you've ever heard of this art form before, but for anybody listening who hasn't heard of it, it's really about creating an interactive forum where the spectators are really transformed into spect actors. So you're seeing plays about people's lived experiences of systemic oppressions, and then spect actors have an opportunity to actually come into the play and change the ending. And so this has always been very exciting to me because it is an opportunity to, one, continue to kind of break down the barriers between an audience and the actors on stage. It's an opportunity for people to really share in an experience, both the experience of the play itself and also understanding what other people's lived experiences are, which can be sometimes very different from what they know. And it can be an opportunity to play and to be hopeful in a way that is really very exciting to me. So that was my last job. And then before that, I spent 5 years in Albuquerque, New Mexico, running the theater program for a place called Working Classroom. And that was a really great opportunity to work with young people as professional artists who were all getting paid for their time to create original plays about issues that were important to them, and being able to work with guest artists from around the country. So it was a really exciting opportunity to really see kind of a different side of working with young people than just like putting on a musical, which can be very fun, but there's more out there. And it's been a really great opportunity for me to learn more embodied ways to be engaged with young people and with artists and their own creative voice to really drive a project. So that's what really excites me about doing theater, and that's what I plan on doing for the rest of my life in some form or another. um,
Do
as
you
I
do you have any, do you write, or are you just more so into directing?
Yeah, I actually define myself as a theater maker because I do it all. So throughout my career, I've been a writer, a producer, a director, an actor, a dancer, a designer. You know, there's a lot of different aspects of the theater making process, and I love doing it with other people. So it's always my favorite thing to not really be on a bill like starring Meggan Gomez, directed by Meggan Gomez, which is great and fine and fun too. But for me, it's always been in the ensemble building and collaborating with other people that has been most exciting to me. So you get to do a little bit of everything.
Okay. So my next question would be, with the pandemic going on, how has it affected your work, if any? Have you been able to work on anything from home with Zoom?
Yeah, so in at Theater of the Oppressed NYC, we actually were able to transfer all of our programming to function here online in Zoom. And so that was an opportunity to really kind of translate what is supposed to be in-person work to how can you do that through a computer screen and still make it feel like you're still doing the work. And we were really successful at that. And Theater of the Oppressed NYC actually has some new plays that they've created with our theater troops that have been premiering this month. Some I think might be available on the Facebook page, and then some might be available, like the recordings might be available later. But it was a really exciting opportunity to be a part of a group that was really thinking nimbly about how to transfer this work to the online space. And of course, it's not the same, but it's certainly really quite a humbling and kind of exciting experience to be able to
Beyond.
find a way.
Yeah, I've noticed over time, like over the past couple of months, with Ben trying to do theater online, is we've really made a way to, bring these worlds to life even on Zoom. So I think that's really cool how the theater department is kind of coming together to still make a way and still telling stories to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the cool things about being a theater artist and an artist in general is that we are used to, uh, working with what we have, and we're used to being resourceful, and we want to do the art making no matter what, and so you find a way. And so it has been really exciting to see a lot of the different ways people have been finding a way to still be makers in this time.
So, who would you say your biggest inspiration is?
Hmm. I mean, so many of people that I know personally. I can't think about inspiration without naming a friend of mine named Lori Woolery. And she's currently the director of public works at the Public in New York. And she's had a really long career doing incredible work as a director, as creating community inside theaters. And she's really somebody who I think inspired me a lot about how being just your authentic self present in a space is the biggest gift that you can have for yourself and also for the people that you're working with. So I always think of her. And of course, Auguste Boal, who wrote Theater of the Oppressed, the book back in the 60s and 70s. He was a great inspiration for me in terms of understanding that theater could be so much more than the traditional theater. And it really expanded my mind into what was possible. So that's certainly an early inspiration for me as well. I'm sure I could go on, but I won't just keep going and going.
So, how would you describe your personality in your younger years, and how has it benefited, if it has, for today, in today's time?
Sure. I think that I've always been really lucky to know who I was. Like even as a young person, even in middle school and high school, where that's actually sometimes counted against you, particularly being a woman.
Yeah.
And being confident in liking who you are is not necessarily a desirable trait as a teenager, but it has helped me, and just being able to be comfortable in my own skin and being able to be authentic with the people I talk to, and just being honest with myself about what is and isn't working. And so I think that I'm really grateful that I've always kind of known who I was, and like had a fairly strong internal compass when I like was doing something that was pushing me towards joy and happiness, and what was pushing me towards more darkness and more just challenges that maybe aren't necessary. And so that kind of knowledge of self has helped me keep moving. It's helped me create opportunities, and I've also have a fearless streak that has helped me take some big risks, like moving across the country when I've never met anybody in New Mexico, things like that. I dropped out of college when I was a junior in college because it didn't feel like the right path for me. And it felt like leaving school was actually the thing that was going to help me the most. And so those were the kinds of things that my young self really helped to prepare me to be the person who I am now.
Okay, so with you, Ben, I know you love New York now, and um, probably will be in New York for a while. Do you see yourself branching theater out to like other locations that are possibly aren't popular for theater, but trying to grow it in certain places?
Yeah, I think that for me, it's about going where the opportunities feel right. So TUNYC, Theater of the Oppressed at NYC, was what felt right, when I took the job 2 years ago. And overdoing the job, maybe the executive director part didn't feel right. New York City is still an amazing place to be, but it's also not the center of the universe where, some people really see it that way. And so for me, it's actually less important to me about the city that I'm in, and more important to me about the community that I'm in. And so I have been able to find community in New York, but there's also communities in a lot of other spaces that maybe aren't so oversaturated with a lot of artists, and need more people in their sphere. So for me, I'm really looking forward to continuing to think about that as I consider other opportunities. And I think that there's some real benefits to being in a smaller city than New York, in the ways in which you get to know the city, you get to know the people. There tends to be a little bit more of an identity to that place, whereas New York is constantly changing and it's constantly for everyone. And so that has its benefits and also challenges as well. But for me, it's really about the people. Where are the people?
So that would be my next question. Are you do you network like through just kind of like meeting other people in person, or are you involved in any social media from Instagram, Facebook, any way that people can possibly get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I have Facebook and Instagram. Those are the only two social media handles that I have. My name has two G's in it, so it's pretty easy to find me. There's not a lot of Meggan Gomez's out there with two G's. In terms of like Facebook groups that I've found really useful over time, Theater Folks of Color is a really good one. I'm part of the steering committee for the Latinx Theater Commons, which is how I know Daphne. And there's Arts Administrators of Color. I'm part of kind of other leaders of color groups, and just like executive directors. So those kinds of groups are really useful. And then I also do a lot of work to meet people one-on-one, particularly in this time as I have a little bit of time to breathe. I'm using it to actually be able to make those connections with the people that I care about, that maybe I've admired them for a long time but have never had a conversation with, or somebody that I've known for a long time but I haven't gotten to spend any time on the phone with them because we're all so busy all the time. So I really, really value the personal one-on-one conversations, as well as being able to connect through social media.
Okay, so I don't know if you heard of it, but I recently just joined the app called Clubhouse. And it's a networking app, and it's an app full of information of people in different fields from, to designers, to, anything from photographers, designers, any type of field that you're in. And I find that it was very useful, or is very useful so far, because you can join these different chat rooms and just chat with different people and meet with different people and talk to different people about your experiences, or may they have information they may be able to share with you, and vice versa. So I think that social media is a really good way for networking, especially right now, because we have time on our hands and everybody's at home. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't be talking to people or meeting different people that are in your field and of your interest. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard about Clubhouse, but I think that it only works on Apple so far. I don't think
yeah,
that
it's Apple and it's invite only. So like the invites are like very like scarce.
I've heard this. I've heard this, but I don't have any Apple products, so I guess I'll be behind on that one.
So hopefully they'll be able to branch out soon.
Yeah.
So my next question was like, as you were younger and grew older, were there like any extracurriculum activities that you participated in that may have been beneficial to this role that you're in today?
Hmm. I mean, the other things that I was doing as a young person, aside from all of the theater that I did, since I have been doing it since I was 10, I was involved in my high school forensics team, which was actually like a debate club. And so there were different categories that you could work in. So I did a lot in the dramatic interpretation because it was the most like theater. But I was also part of the team that was also working on kind of extemporaneous speaking and being able to make a case for the pros and cons of a different issue. So that was always part of the rehearsal time. The meeting time was being able to work on that. And those were always really good for your public speaking skills, and also for thinking about things in different ways, and being able to understand how there's many different opportunities and perspectives to be able to consider when making decisions and trying to evaluate a situation. I did choir growing up. I love to sing. And so that was an opportunity to really be able to sing in that way. And I do think that a lot of voice training was really helpful in this kind of work because I talk a lot and it's really tiring, and it's really great to be able to sustain yourself in that way. And I find that singing gives me a kind of joy that talking doesn't. I mean, talking is really great and all, but there's a therapeutic nature to it that I've never let go of. So I've always done that. I'm trying to think if there's other things. I mean, I was part of National Honor Society and, various academic things, and I always did well in school, which is always really helpful. But I do feel like I got my best training being a theater artist, because you get to understand a lot about a lot of different cultures, a lot of different time periods, a lot of different movements throughout history. And just you're always with people, which is, I think, the most valuable thing.
Okay, so specifically, what steered your interest in being an activist and more involved in social justice?
Sure. So, I went to college for acting. I was doing a Bachelor of Fine Arts. And I had envisioned a life as an actor for myself. But the more I was in college and the more I realized that the things I loved about theater were maybe not necessarily the same thing that other people loved about theater, um, it made me kind of question why theater, why then, and also thinking about like the work that was being produced at the school and the things that we were studying, the plays that we were reading. I mean, it always leaned very male and very white, and it also didn't reflect the world that I lived in. And I think that I've always been very conscious of the world. I've been following elections and politics probably since middle school, so I've always cared about those things. And the older I got, the more I realized that I kind of had to make my own work if it was really going to focus on the things that I cared about. And so when I did read Theater of the Oppressed for the first time, I was 20 years old. And it really gave me an opportunity to understand that there was a vocabulary for the things I was talking about, and that there was a field for the things I was talking about. And so I started to just keep my eyes open for different opportunities that seemed more interested in my unique personal voice, as opposed to me being able to be a product to be layered upon by someone else. And not that all acting is that, it's just that in order to be successful, and by successful I mean making money, as like in order to make money, you have to be willing to your whole life walk into rooms being willing to let people judge you and decide your fate. And that was just not for me. And so for me, it made a lot more sense to my heart and to my soul to keep moving towards social justice and really using the tools of theater that I find so inspiring to tell a different kind of story than I was seeing as a young person.
Okay. Can you think of any situations or instances where it was involving social justice that made your heart like painful or uneasy?
I think I need to reframe the question. What do you mean?
So, like, has there been any situations that you were involved in or that you've seen that kind of like didn't sit right with you when it came to like social justice issues?
Like in a theater experience that I had?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that my university experience would probably be a real example of that. I worked really hard. I mean, I've always been somebody who cared a lot about doing well. And I care about the work that I do. And very surprised to me at the end of my sophomore year, my advisor actually put me on academic probation, specifically because she didn't believe I enjoyed acting enough. And that to me seemed really wrong, because that was like somebody with a lot of power kind of dangling my degree in front of my face, being like, you need to please me and you need to show me that you like it in order for me to give you your degree and for you to not get kicked out of this program. And so that was a real, that I mean, that really is in terms of social justice, that was like my education was being threatened because I didn't behave properly, that I didn't perform the way I was being expected to. And so I kept advocating for myself, and this was a way in which I had to really understand what I believed was just. And so part of advocating for myself was being able to participate in a devising workshop with an artist named Tim Miller, that my advisor didn't want me to do because it interfered with one rehearsal. And I had to fight really hard in order to be able to do that workshop. And then through the experience of doing a workshop that was more based on my individual voice versus like pleasing people with power, I realized that the university setting was not for me, and that maybe there was something fundamentally wrong with the education I was getting. And so I publicly dropped out of college as part of a performance and was like laid out the reasons why. And so that was kind of one of my first acts of intervention in my life to put myself on the path of justice, and put myself on the path of honoring myself and honoring my voice and what I bring to the table, without it being kind of uh, limited by what I was experiencing in my university. So that's one example. I'm sure I could come up with more.
Oh no, that's fine. But that says a lot about where the start came from. I would say my next question would be sorry. My next question would be what kind of well, actually first, are you involved in any upcoming productions that you can speak on?
I am not. I am unemployed for the first time in my adult life, and it's amazing. And I do look forward to having a job again, but in this moment, actually, my I am completely like like taking a break from projects.
Okay. And my last question for you would be, do you have any advice for any for young and upcoming actors, directors, anybody that's in the entertainment field?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that's really important is determining what your non-negotiables are. Like, basically, no matter what field you're in, no matter if it's theater, film, something completely uncreative. I mean, most jobs are creative in some way, but I'm just saying, like, that's not like, art with a capital A or whatever. Um, but really, it's so essential to know what feeds you and what really causes harm, and how can you know within yourself what is happening in a moment, to be able to determine whether or not the thing that is causing harm is because something is being done to you that you need to speak up about. Maybe it's something that you need to walk away from, even though it's something that you've really aspired to do. And sometimes there's really an opportunity to really have a moment of learning, where a change can be made. But being able to know within yourself, what you're willing to put up with and what you are not is really really important, because this is a field where people take advantage. I mean, it's an extractive field that is it is built to exploit people. And so trying to find a way to not let it diminish you as a human being is so essential. And then always thinking about, like, if you're in a room where things feel really right, what is that about? What does that feel like? And how do you get more of that? Because the more you can name it, the more you can find more of it. And the more you can do that for other people. And that, I think, will lead you to really great projects, and also steer you away from the projects that will make you miserable, because there's plenty of those out there too.
Yes. Well, I thank you for being here today with me and answering these questions for me, and that hopefully the audience gets something out of this. And I just want to thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I would love maybe the next time I get to ask you questions.
Yes.